from Hollywood, it's The Nighttime Show. With us always, our producer and head writer, Matt Walker. I'm the host of The Nighttime Show, Stephen Kramer Glickman. And our guest today is the one and only Taylor Momsen. Taylor, thank you so much for being here. It's very cool of you.
Thanks for having me. How you doing, man?
I'm good. How's your quarantine? How you holding up during all this absolute nonsense that's happening to the world?
It is certainly crazy. I mean, I'm doing all right, I guess. You know, all things considering, can't complain. Certainly missing the road and outside life, but all in all, doing all right.
Yeah, I mean, you're as a musician, you have been you've been just crushing it. We put out stuff on Instagram and on our Facebook, and just kind of asking if people had questions for you, things like this, and literally almost every single question was about music and about your about the Pretty Reckless and about other musical projects that you have. Where did the music come from? How did this get started for you?
Oh man, that's a long question.
I know. I'm sorry.
No, music's been such a huge part of my life since, honestly, before I can remember. My dad is such a music lover, so I grew up in a household of just listening to great albums. It started with the Beatles, was the first band I ever heard, and the bug of rock and roll kind of clicked and stuck, I guess, from a very young age. And I don't know how to go through 27 years.
Of course. When you were first starting out in music, did you have a particular who were you listening to? What was the big inspirations for you?
The Beatles are a forever mainstay. That was where I fell in love with music as a kid, and obviously continue to. They're the best. But as I grew up with classic rock, so it was the Beatles and the Stones and the Who and Pink Floyd and AC/DC. And then as I got older, I got into a lot of the 90s stuff. I fell in love with Soundgarden, Nirvana, Pearl Jam, that whole scene.
Sure.
And then some kind of eclectic-y stuff in between. But really, I fell in love with rock and roll at such a young age, and it really, I don't know, it really touched me in a deep place, and I never let that go. And it was something that it was just a passion of mine, and songwriting was actually the thing that really, I always sang and stuff, and I loved it. But when I started writing songs, that was the thing that really connected me to it in a different way. I think it was such an outlet for me, and I don't know, something that I wouldn't be myself if I didn't write songs, if that makes sense. I don't know who I'd be if there wasn't me. If I wasn't making music, I don't know who I'd be as a person. It's such a part of my identity.
What's the first song you wrote?
Oh God, something terrible when I was 5.
Yeah, Mozart composed little Twinkle Twinkle Little Star when he was 4. So come on.
All right. I think it was I loved animals. I think I wrote about my dad's dead dog or something when I was a kid.
But,
see, I would listen to a song called "My Dad's Dead Dog." That's a good name for a song.
Yeah, sure. Well, maybe save it for a punk rock album or something. But no, you write a lot of bad songs before you write good ones, and I think it took me a long time to kind of hone my craft. And basically, when I started to pursue music professionally, it was when I had reached an age that I, first of all, you can't put out a record when you're a little kid. So
right, of course.
You can, but that's not good for anyone.
Right.
So I had to wait till I was old enough to actually write something that was meaningful and something that I wanted to share with the world, and meet the right musical partners, and form the band, and all that takes time. And so really when I made the transition into music full time, it was simply because I had written a record's worth of material that I really loved and really wanted to share with people. And once I had done that, there was no looking back.
Well, did you find when you were going into music, transitioning from your acting career, which was obviously pretty successful, into music full time, did you find when you're dealing with these record companies that they wanted to sort of give you the songs they wanted you to do, or were they okay with you just being like, hey, here's what I'm gonna do, and you're just going to put it out? How did that sort of play out?
there there was a little bit of both, I guess. I think in the very beginning, I mean, I certainly was sent songs and saying do and kind of getting people were trying to push me into a certain vein that I wasn't comfortable with. That it wasn't my like because for me music is so about self-expression that if you're not writing your own songs I don't understand the point. Like
Sure.
so,
Yeah.
like I really don't. I got sent songwriter things going do this and it'll be great, and to me it was so not a question. It was just like, well, no, I want to be an artist, and that's not even want to be. I am an artist, and so either you support my vision and want to help me along this journey or you don't. And so it took a while to find the right partners in the music industry who really backed what I was trying to do and what I'm still trying to do. I have to thank my managers for that. I have a really great support team behind me who are really just utterly supportive of my vision. Because if it's not your vision, then it's so easy to get lost in the commercial world of music. And it's always a struggle because, commercial, commerce and music do not mix. Like they're commerce and art, and they really don't mix. And so it's a kind of a constant struggle and a constant battle to make the art win, I guess.
Yeah.
And so, it's because that's really all that matters. Like, as long as I make something that I'm proud of and I'm happy with and I can listen to it, then I'm happy. Success or no success, that's secondary. It's really just about making something great.
Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, everybody has the road to success is like so different for everybody, and what people consider success is so different. Like, what was the moment for you where you were like, all right, I have achieved something that's significantly successful in this part of my business? Like, was there a moment where you were like, okay, I've crossed over into what I wanted out of this?
I think there's been multiple moments, all on different scales, but I think, they come in waves. I think the first moment was meeting the band and going, oh, wow, like there's something really magical here. I mean, and it's very difficult to find musical partners who you're so just on the same page with and connect with on so many levels, because music is so incredibly personal. And so to be able to share yourself with other people like that in such an honest, open way is challenging. And so when I met the guys in the band, and our producer Kato, who's now passed away, but at the time that was an incredible moment in my life. And then finishing the first album was, I think probably the second thing. And then going on tour. I mean, I'm kind of just going through the list.
No, please.
And then, but then going on tour and, releasing a record. And we kind of started overseas, and we went to Europe, and we played the show at Notting Hills Arts Club in London. And it was this tiny little like divey club. It was awesome. And to this date, it's still one of my favorite shows we've ever played, because we just released the album. And, you never know what to expect when you put out music into the world. You don't know if people are going to respond to it. It's so something that I don't think about while creating. Like, I don't think about what's going to happen after it comes out, because I so just make it for myself. And we played the show, and it was way oversold, lined down the block, packed, jammed. And we only had like one single out at the time. And the record had just come out, and they knew every word to every song on the record.
Wow.
And they sang so loudly.
Wow.
That they were louder than the PA.
Holy shit.
We couldn't get louder than they were. And it was a pretty incredible moment to know that something that I wrote and worked so hard on had reached people around the world and connected to them. It was a moment I'll never forget. And then that just kind of, continued and just kept getting bigger and bigger. And, then our second record, Going to Hell, came out, and Heaven Knows went #1, and having a huge rock radio single for the first time was, insane.
That's so cool.
And
Yeah.
And and now our fourth record's coming out hopefully soon here, and we just put out the first single, Death by Rock and Roll, and that just went #1. So it's like, okay, we're just trying to kind of beat our own goals here, I guess. I don't really know how to think about it. It's really humbling. It's when people relate and connect to your music, it's just kind of the highest compliment you can get as an artist, I guess.
Well, what's so crazy, and we talk about this because Matt and I are both stand-up comics, and I'm an actor and all that crap, and I think we've all talked about this numerous times that like all stand-up comedians and all actors want to be rock stars. It's like something we all want because the idea of being on stage and performing and there being this audience, and it's such a fucking cool thing, and it almost never happens. Like that transition is almost fucking impossible for
it. I have to tell you,
you've done it.
Totally. Well, thank you. It's totally true what you're saying though, because I'm a huge stand-up comedian fan. I love comedy. Like I live in New York. I haven't been there for a while because of quarantine, but like I go to the Comedy Cellar all the time. I'm a huge comedy fan.
Oh my God, and that's awesome.
I love it. I love it. It's the thing that, aside from music, it's the other thing that keeps me going is watching stand-up. It's kind of on when we're on tour, it's on repeat on the bus. It's just constant comedy, and so I want to be a comedian, and so I've heard this many times while speaking to friends of mine who are comedians. They all want to be rock stars, and all rock stars want to be comedians.
100%.
I think it goes both ways.
Like John Mayer's tried and miserably a bunch of times, and you're like, just stop.
John Mayer.
Like you're John Mayer. You don't need this. Like being a comedian is miserable 99% of the time. Like you don't need to do that.
I ran into Justin Timberlake at the Improv one night, and I was like, "Are you fucking kidding me? Are you gonna start doing stand-up? You handsome son of a bitch!"
Like this is not for you, Justin Timberlake. This is not your realm.
he had that SNL thing going at the time, probably.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, he did.
Yeah. Now, do you find that part of the reason that you prefer music to, say, acting is that because you get to write your own songs?
We're just assuming that. Do you prefer music to acting?
Oh, it's not even a comparison. But I'm not an actress. I'm not an actress.
Yeah.
I mean, I got put into acting when I was 2 years old. Like I got put into it as a young child, and it was just a part of my life and a part of my life growing up. And when I got old enough to make my own decisions, I quit all that and simply worked on.
So parents, if you're listening, and you put your kid in acting at 2 years old, this is what's going to happen to him.
Yeah.
You don't want this to happen.
Yeah.
They'll wind up Taylor Momsen. That's
for God's sake, man. Hey, come on.
They'll wind up rich and successful as musicians instead.
Exactly.
What a terrible outcome.
Hey, it hasn't been easy.
Yeah. No, I was wondering. So, like, do you find that one of the reasons why you prefer music is because you get to express yourself and write your own stuff, as opposed to acting? You're mainly like reading words that other people have written for you and doing what other people tell you to do.
Oh yeah, I mean, you kind of just summed it up. I mean, acting is you're playing a character, you're playing someone else's role, you're fulfilling someone else's vision, I guess, or attempting to. And music is simply fulfilling my own vision and saying what I want to say and writing what I want to write and sharing that with the world. And so they're completely like two totally different aspects of the spectrum to me. Like you can't compare one to the other. One is simply just trying to be yourself as authentically as you can, and the other is completely playing a different person.
Yeah, and that's why I enjoy stand-up over any acting roles that I've ever had, is because it's my own stuff. I get to talk about what I want to talk about. It's not just reading words somebody else read.
Yeah. Well, it's fully your project, so you're 1,000% invested in it. Like there is no one else. The buck stops with you.
Yeah.
Well, it's the acting side of things. Not to like. It's a tricky and I don't want to be like, oh, we have to talk about the acting stuff, but what's interesting is like I'm just saying this is that like you start out in like this massive gigantic, I think not your first job. I think your first job was Cosby Show. Is that right? Maybe.
My first job was a shake and bake commercial.
Oh my God!
Nice. Is that available on YouTube?
Yes, it is, and I've made many jokey memes about it on my Instagram.
Nice.
So great. That's so great. Like when you were acting when you were very very young, like was the environment like an okay environment for you? Like was your family with you? Did you have like protection and people and stuff like that? Like how was it being
Uh,
young and doing that?
yes and no. I mean, I didn't really know anything differently. So, I look back on it now and it's like, oh, what a strange life I've led. But I didn't, because I started so young, I didn't really have a normal schooling environment. I was in and out of different schools constantly. I was traveling constantly, so I didn't really have a friend group growing up, which I think was a huge part of why I wanted to be in a band and not a
Of
solo
course.
artist.
Of
Was,
course.
it's who wants to do this alone? I wanted to be the Beatles, not Elvis Presley. Like I
Yeah.
wanted, who wants to it sucks to do this alone. You want your friends there. So I think I think that's why I connected to music so much, is because I spent so much of my life kind of um, in isolation in my own head. It was kind of my fantasy world was where I escaped or whatever. And that's where the writing came into play.
Yeah.
But I mean, like, I'm not going to complain about it. It was honestly, it was so long ago. It's just, and it, turned me into who I am today. So it is what it is, but it certainly, it had its ups and its downs. And,
Well,
you know.
it's got to be pretty fucking bizarre to be a kid and be, sure, like we know people who were like child actors and they were in a couple things or a commercial here and there, this and that, and then suddenly you're in How the Grinch Stole Christmas, which the budget on that movie was $125 million, and
Probably ran way over.
It made like $500 million, and
Yeah, I didn't make that.
right, but it's like an enormous thing
And
for
you're
a
there
kid.
with the most successful former child actor of all time directing that movie, Ron Howard.
Oh yeah, Ron
Yeah.
Howard. I mean,
Yeah.
he was a sweetheart. I from the very little that I was 5 years old in that.
Yeah,
so,
you were
like,
just a kid.
so the very little I remember. I mean, that was all positive from what I can remember. And but it's strange to live your life. I can't tell at this point anymore what are actual memories and what are memories based on photographs and things that are documented. I mean,
Yeah.
there's every Christmas the Grinch is on television, so there's no getting away from it. I don't have any I don't have any regrets or shame or anything about it. It's just it was so long ago. It's like, what were you doing when you were 5? Want to talk about that?
Oh my God, no, of course, and that's the tricky part about something like this is that like it's like there are like being an actress and being on a show like having done like a show like Gossip Girl for the amount of time that you did that show for and things like this, like you end up, whether you want to or not, you kind of get thrust into being this person that people look up to, and you can't make any mistakes, and you're like out there trying to like grow and be a kid, and it's fucking hard. I mean,
Well, I never really lived my life like that. I try. I'm not a huge fan of technology, and I understand social media's place and stuff, and I enjoy it here and there, but I never lived my life with the worry of what the outside world would think, because if you start to think like that, it can destroy your psyche. Like that's not a healthy way to think. So I was never really worried about making I made plenty of mistakes, believe me, and a lot of them are all over the internet.
Yeah.
So it's just I try to just live my life without letting that influence me at all, I guess. Which is why when you release a record, it's such a strange feeling, because I work on this music and stuff so much by myself and with our internal little group, and then it goes out into the world, and I say it's like putting it's like having a child and then sending it off to college, or sending it out to the world, or throwing it in the water and going, well, I hope you can swim. Because you don't think about that while you're making it. You think about, am I making something good? Am I making something that I'm proud of? And then it comes out in the world, and you just go, well, I hope you like it.
absolutely.
Now, did you have any musical training when you're growing up? Because you're doing acting, you're probably going to acting classes and things like that. Were you studying music in a way, in sort of some sort of like classroom setting, or with tutors, or
No,
lessons or anything? Or
I've actually never taken any lessons. I never took acting lessons. I never took music lessons. I mean, I took
Really?
like piano. I took piano classes when I was very young and stuff. But
she's just really
no,
good at
I'm all-
everything. automatically.
I don't know if I'm really good. I don't know if I'm really good at anything, but I try.
No, you're amazingly talented. You're super talented.
Oh, thank you. I'm fully self-taught though. It's just I don't know. It's just something I loved, and I just kind of worked on by myself.
It's a thing, it's a thing that always sort of amazed me was Joe Perry from Aerosmith. I remember reading something about him, and like they'd already been like the biggest rock band in the world in the mid '70s, and that's when he started taking guitar lessons. Like at that level is when he started, because he was like I remember some interview I read, and he talked about how like he felt like his solos weren't where he wanted them to be, so he's like, I'm gonna go get some actual musical theory training and learn about why music is the way that it is and the structure and how things can play together in different ways.
Sure.
And then he used that to take him to like the next level as a guitarist. So it's kind of interesting. A lot of people start that way, and then sometimes they go in later on. They're like, let me go back and learn some of the things that like the people in orchestras know and see how I can apply that to my music.
Sure. I mean, once you run the gambit of what you know, you go, well, what else is there to know?
Yeah.
So that makes sense to me.
Exactly. Hey, Matt, before we continue doing the show, we got to talk about what we're talking into.
These Sennheiser microphones are fantastic.
Yeah, they are literally top of the line. The best company in the world when it comes to microphones, headphones, audio equipment like this. I mean, it's just so damn good.
If you want to sound good talking into something, get yourself some Sennheiser microphones.
Yeah, it makes you sound epic. Mike Black, say something epic.
Space, the final frontier.
Bum, bum, bum,
These are the voyages. If I say any more, lawyers will get involved. We have to.
Exactly.
But I said it clearly, and you can hear it clearly.
God, I can hear it. It sounds perfect. Hey, go check out Sennheiser. If you are looking for audio equipment, you're looking for a great microphone, this is the one to use. Mike, Matt, what's this one called that we're using?
This is the MD42.
Oh, it's perfect.
Yeah.
It's absolutely perfect.
Find them at Sennheiser.com.
You bet. All right, let's get back to the show. One of the questions that was asked of you from one of your fans was the Vans Warped Tour. How was that tour for you?
Oh man.
Those tours are we
know comedians that were on that
comedians
in the comedy tent, and it was
Holy
brutal.
Shit, yeah.
Brutal.
Yeah. Brutal's a good word. I mean, that was our first like proper long, few month tour. And looking back on it now, I mean, when we were on it, being on the road, I was like, I was 16 at the time. It was, it was a blast. Getting to play every day, fans and going from city to city and living on a tour bus for the first time. Like all that was amazing. But I think looking back on it, I think the best part about Warped Tour was probably that we really learned how to cut our road chops on that tour, which are different than studio chops. Like Warped Tour did this thing where you didn't know what time you were playing. They didn't tell you until the day of. So there was many mornings where I would be, asleep in the bunk, and the tour manager would come wake me up and go, "Hey, you're on in 30 minutes, get up." And so I would just take my pants off and put on shoes and wear my pajamas on stage. Like,
wow. Oh my God.
There was a lot of road choppy. It was like boot camp for like summer camp, boot camp for bands, I guess, which I think, in the beginning of our career, I think was probably a really good thing to go through. But I think it also trains you in a lot of negative aspects of touring. Because once you get to a more kind of professional level, like if I have my timeline right, which I'm so bad at this, but I believe the next big thing we did after that was we toured with Evanescence, and going from Warped Tour to a proper, like professional tour was very drastic. Like watching the way she ran her camp and the way everything rolled like a machine and just so professionally handled. I really learned a lot on that Evanescence tour.
Okay.
About how to be professional at this, whereas Warped Tour was more of like, fun summer camp.
I've got a good Evanescence story for you real quick if you want. It's the only time I've ever told this story on the show.
Yeah.
But I was at a bowling alley in Canoga Park. We're talking maybe 15 years ago.
The Canoga Park Bowl?
The Canoga Park Bowl. and I'm at the bar, and I was having a drink.
That's where we both started doing stand-up.
It's where we both started doing stand-up.
Nice.
Yes,
Nice.
yes. And I'm standing there, and there was this dude, big, tall dude, kind of heavy set, and we were talking, and he was like, "Oh, I'm in a band," and I was like, "Oh yeah, what band?" He was like, "It's called Seether." And I was like, "Oh, I know that band, kind of." And then he was like, "Yeah, I'm the lead singer of that band." And I was like, "Oh, okay." And then he was like, we started talking a little bit, and then he goes, "Ah, damn it, my girlfriend's bothering me. She's texting me. She wants me to come watch her do Dance Dance Revolution." And I was like, "All right." And I like followed him into the arcade, and Amy from Evanescence was doing Dance Dance Revolution in a tutu. And she was like, "Are you watching me?" And he was like, "Yes." And she was like, "Watch me!" And then she just kept doing it. And I was like, "This is the fucking weirdest thing I've ever experienced."
That's the same arcade. They used to have a horse racing game that was like this giant 4-person horse racing game, and I used to play that all the time with a guy who was one of the new members of Suicidal Tendencies at the time, 15 years ago.
Wow. Holy shit!
So it was just a hangout for rock stars, I guess.
It was. It was.
Is it divey?
It's very
very
divey.
divey. Yeah.
Well, then of course, then you're attracting the right clientele.
We used to call it the Pit.
Yeah.
Was the bar.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's my favorite kind of places are dive bars.
Absolutely.
More fun. Yeah.
I feel like I fit better in the shadows.
Yeah.
Another question that popped up. This was from CC Solano 16. Asked, "Is there any pop singer that you like, that you are a fan of in any way?"
That's an interesting question. I mean, I think it depends on your definition of pop. I mean, you could argue that the Beatles are a pop band. So, I could say John Lennon and Paul McCartney, and I would stand by that answer. I'm assuming they probably mean more contemporary, which I don't listen to a lot of contemporary music. If I'm being honest, it's not anything against it or whatever. It's just not really my cup of tea. But I do like, I'm trying to think off the top of my head. I do love something totally sideways, which is the band D Antwoord from South Africa.
Sure.
And I think Yolandi and Ninja, I think they're awesome.
And they think you're freaky.
No, they think I'm freaky.
Yeah, they think, yes.
Well, I think they're freaky, and I like them a lot.
I know, they're great. What about musicians that you haven't gotten to work with that you would like to work with at some point? Do you have anybody that you
I mean, that's always an interesting question too, because I respect so many people, and when you think off the top of your head, oh, I'd love to work with blank blank or blank blank, like, yeah, it sounds like a great idea, but without a song or a reason for it, it's kind of fruitless. So I think, I mean, I've honestly on this album, I got to work with a couple people that are, have been huge influences on me throughout my career and my life, and it's kind of a lot of full circle moments. I mean, we have a song called "Only Love Can Save Me Now," which features Kim Thale and Matt Cameron of Soundgarden, which was
that's got to be a huge deal for you. I mean, being a Soundgarden fan, that's a big deal.
Massive deal. It's one of my favorite songs on the record, and I honestly, I can't wait for people to hear it. I mean, there's the whole backstory to that. I mean, we were opening for Soundgarden on that last tour. We were there the night in Detroit when Chris passed, and that,
oh my God,
that was very affecting to me. Everything that happened, and I remained close with the guys in the band, and so to get, first of all, I don't want to get heavy here, so
no, please.
But to get to work with them on something that was ours was incredibly special. I mean, we flew to Seattle. We went to London Bridge Studios, which is where they recorded Louder Than Love. And, they did like Pearl Jam's 10 there, and Alice in Chains, like amazing records were made at that place. And so to get to go to that studio with Matt and Kim and hear the song that I'd written come to life with them playing on it was just such an incredible experience, that like a highlight in my career that I'll never, ever forget. And I honestly can't wait for everyone to hear that one. I can't talk too much about it because it's not out, but that's something really special. And certainly something I never could have dreamt of as a kid that would ever happen. And then, I mean, and then if I'm continuing, if I'm
Please.
talking about who we've collaborated with, on this record, we also have the amazing Tom Morello is on a song called And So It Went, who, Rage Against the Machine, Audioslave, all his solo stuff, Atlas Underground, everything he touches is amazing. So to have him come in on this song, and when he comes in with his solo, if you're a Tom Morello fan, I'll tell you, he does not disappoint. He comes in with his unique voice, and he comes in wailing and just elevates the song to a whole level.
So fucking cool. That's so cool.
That is so. Oh, we can curse on this. I've been trying to censor myself.
Oh no, you can say whatever you want.
And Rage Against the Machine, by the way, is number one on my list of bands that I want to see live that I've never had a chance to. And they finally get back together, and they're gonna do like their little like Coachella thing in like 6 cities, whatever. I'm like, okay, where can I travel to go see them? And then a fucking pandemic hits. And I'm like, God damn it.
It sucks.
I'm with you on that. They were still are on my bucket list.
Like Guns N' Roses with Axl was number one.
I was so fucking excited. Yeah. Are you kidding?
They were number one. I finally got to see them. So yeah.
This pandemic sucks so much. We were supposed to be opening for Guns N' Roses. Like we had some of the best touring.
I would have seen you. I would have gone. I would have gone to see that. Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, our touring was insane. It was the Foo Fighters, who I love. It was Guns N' Roses with Gary Clark Jr. It was Pearl Jam. It was like all the festivals. The list went on and on, and it was like this amazing lineup of shows. And
fucking COVID.
I know, the worst. Yeah, I've only been to a few concerts in my life, and they are Marilyn Manson during the Antichrist Superstar tour.
I saw him when he broke his ankle on that tour, and then, by the way, Hole opened for him. Hole was amazing.
I know.
They were at the LA Forum. Hole was fantastic. Blew it out of the water. Courtney Love was amazing. Right, great show.
Taylor? Have you ever seen Marilyn Manson perform in person?
We opened for Marilyn Manson.
Okay. Oh my God! Yeah. Did you really?
Yeah.
That's
so he
cool.
puts on a great show, right? He comes out, he breaks his ankle jumping off a speaker after like 3 songs, and then he goes backstage and like, sorry, concert's over. And I was like, put on an Aircast, Marilyn. Come on. You don't have to run around.
He's the coolest.
Those shows are amazing.
Like, what was that like working with him? That must have been insane.
It was. We have a saying of what goes on the road stays on the road, and that tour certainly lives up to that saying. But honestly, he's super sweet, and it was a fantastic experience, and I'd do it again in a heartbeat. But great, but crazy. I can't.
Sure.
Things I'll save for a memoir.
Save that for the book in 30 years.
Write the book.
It's like when they do the thing about Motley Crue and Ozzy Osbourne snorting ants. It's like
we weren't snorting ants, but.
Well, that sounds like a pretty damn good time, though. What of all the people in music that you've gotten to spend time with, like, who's the person where you were like kind of cold sweating, like panicking, though that you're in the same room as them?
It had to be Chris Cornell. Mm-hmm. I'd met him a few times before that tour briefly, but when he walked up to me, we were outside, I believe we were in Indianapolis, and he walked up. I was sitting outside the dressing rooms, and the sun was in my eyes, and the band and everyone were hanging out outside, and I couldn't see who was walking up because he was so tall, and like this ray of light was backlighting him in this luminous godlike way. and I just hear, hey Taylor, and I look up, and it's fucking Chris Cornell standing there, and all the emotions came flooding up, and I stood up, and we had a lovely conversation, and that was at the beginning of the tour. And I'd have to say Chris Cornell, he's been such an influence on my career.
How did you get word you were going to tour with him? Like, was that something arranged through management, or did you get a call one day and they're like, hey, do you want to come on the road with us, or how did that whole play out?
It, everything goes through, management, labels, agents, all that. But I got a phone call that said, hey, so you guys are opening for Soundgarden. And that was that was a phone call I never thought I'd get in my life.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
it was pretty much, we were at the highest of highs. I mean, you have to understand, this band kind of formed around the love of the Beatles and Soundgarden, that
Mhm.
all four of us at the time, five of us, Kato, our producer, we all loved that music so much that was the kind of the glue that brought us together. So to suddenly be opening for Soundgarden,
Oh
like
my
Yeah.
God.
what?
Yeah, I mean,
Our minds were blown.
and his loss was like a really bad. That was a bad one. Like because just that voice and his just what he was like as a person. Just it just seems like that was a really bad one. You know, it's gotta be hard to be out with someone like that and be working with someone like that and then have them pass that way. That's very difficult.
It was it was past devastating. I mean, we took a few hits kind of right in a row there. I
Mhm.
mean, it was, going from the highest of highs of being on that tour to, saying goodbye to him in Detroit and hugging him goodbye and having a nice conversation. And he got in the car, and then, a few hours later, I got the phone call that he had passed, and
Oh my God.
I was crushed is an understatement. I didn't know how to, I was young, and I didn't know how to process. I'd never dealt with anything like that before. And I was in such shock that, when we were in the middle of a record cycle at the time, and we were supposed to stay on the road.
Mhm.
We played a couple shows after that, but I was not in a good headspace. I was not okay.
Yeah.
And I was like, I can't get on stage every night and pretend that I'm happy and fine and entertain an audience when it just feels forced and it's fake, and I don't want to be that person. I don't want to be that artist. So I canceled everything and went home and tried to process and understand what had happened, and actually started writing again, and was like, okay, let's go make another record. And right as we were talking about getting into the studio again, and where are we going to make it, where should we do this, all the pre-pro conversations, a few days later I got the phone call that our producer and my best friend in
Mhm.
the world, Kato, had passed on a motorcycle crash.
Oh my
Wow.
God.
And so that was kind of the nail in the coffin for me in a lot of ways, where I just went down a hole of utter depression
Mhm.
and this, it's this very, very dark place that,
Yeah.
I hopefully will never go back to again. And it's like it's so massive that I wasn't sure how to get out of it. I wasn't sure if I ever would. I kind of gave up on everything. I kind of went, I don't know what's the point of doing anything? What's the point of making music? What's the point of anything?
Mhm.
And yeah, it got real bad there for a minute. And just into this deep depression of substance abuse and everything that goes along with it, of the trauma and everything. And to make a very long story short, I turned to music like I always have in my life, and it slowly but surely was the thing that saved me, that really brought me out of it. And just from listening to records that have always been there for me and felt comforting, to that led to writing, which I didn't really have to try to write this record. It was so ingrained into who I'd become that it just kind
Mhm.
of poured out. And when that happened, then it was the whole, once I'd written the album, it was okay. Now how the fuck do we go about making a record without Kato? Like we've never made a record without Kato before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that was the whole thing. And luckily I knew one other guy who's a dear friend and an amazing engineer. His name's Jonathan Wyman, who actually he is out of Maine. And so we went into the studio with him, and this is actually the first album that Ben, the guitar player, and I co-produced, because it was so we made this record kind of, it felt almost like, I guess it felt very much like, it feels like a rebirth in a lot of ways, because it feels almost like the first album, in the sense that we lost everything, and so we were starting from nothing again.
Yeah.
And so it's everything we went through, everything I went through, it's all in there in the songs. It's like I still get choked up talking about it, so excuse me, but
Mhm.
it's all there in the music, and that's why I'm excited for people to hear it, because in my opinion, it's really the best album we've ever made. It's a level up of I don't know, maturity and whatever you want to say about it. But I just,
Well, look,
it's all
Taylor,
in there.
I appreciate you talking about it because it means something to you, and you and your music means something to us and to your fans, and it's like it's nice to know kind of where it's coming from, and I mean, Kato was like a fucking huge deal for those who don't know. I mean, aside from his like amazing work with you, he's also like, My Chemical Romance, worked with them, and Drowning Pool and Papa Roach and all sorts of like huge bands, and had been to, he had done a lot of work with some really incredible people. So that's a big loss, and that's 2 huge losses right in a row. So for you to turn that into music is a big deal. It's a really big deal.
I kind of had hit the place where it was okay. I'm at this crossroads in my life where it had gotten so kind of dark that it was either death or move forward, and I chose move forward.
You chose the correct one.
Yeah,
I chose.
Yes.
Thank God.
I chose to put it into music. So I gotta thank rock and roll, man. I know it sounds so fucking cliche, but rock and roll saved my life for the billionth time. It's the one thing that I can always turn to. I didn't have a lot of friends growing up, but I always had those records and music, and that's why I say music's been my best friend my whole life.
Yeah,
and it still is. It never lets me down.
That's great. Cliches are a funny thing. They
stem from some truth.
They stem from some truth. They bring comfort when you're going through something. Like I went through like a huge life change recently, and like when I went through
He's on menopause now.
I am on menopause.
I'm sorry.
I went through this like massive breakup after like being with someone for almost 9 years, and like it was I mean, it was not. There's been worse breakups that people have had, but it was just a hard thing, to let go of. And my first phone call was to Matt Walker, who's on this podcast with me, because I was like, "Hey, can you come over so I have someone to like sit with and talk with and stuff?" And then he came over, and then we like sat together and talked. And it was like, oh my God, this is the most cliche fucking thing in history for like to like call your best friend to like sit with you while you're going through a hard time. But it's cliche for a reason. It's because it's helpful. Yeah, it's helpful and it's comforting,
It's amazing to, to be fortunate enough to have a support system of friends and people that you can turn to in times of trouble,
Absolutely.
You're just quoting a bunch of song lyrics now. Like, I heard that's what friends are for in times of trouble. Like, there's Dionne Warwick, there's the Beatles in times of trouble.
Hey, before we continue doing the show, we got to talk about the equipment that we're using to make the show, make an epic show that is. It sounds like everyone is right here, like we're all sitting together, but we're not.
We've got a fantastic multi-track recorder from Zoom. If you need multi-track recordings, that's the only company you should even be looking at. Basically, we had issues when we had to switch to doing things during a pandemic, and we went from doing a show with people in person to people over the phone, and Zoom just made it a piece of cake. Yeah,
you bet. ZoomCorp.com is the website, and this has made it so that we could interview people in Nigeria,
New Zealand,
Guatemala, Austria, the Czech Republic. When we were doing all those... Are you just
naming countries now?
Yeah. Well, no. When we were doing all the interviews with the cast of 90 Day Fiancé, we were talking to people, in the Ukraine. Yep. Like, we were doing all sorts of crazy stuff. And then just the other day when we had John Rhys Davies on the show.
From New Zealand.
He was in New Zealand the whole time.
Sounded like he was
sitting in the room with us.
Yeah.
It truly is the mark of excellence for podcasting. Zoom Live Track L8 8-track mixer recorder, the board for creators, podcasting, music, and beyond.
Yeah, it is a badass system, and we're very lucky to be working with Zoom. Go check out ZoomCorp.com. That's ZoomCorp.com. Zoom, you have to say it 3 times. That's what people do in ads, right? Zoom,
what is it, Stephen?
ZoomCorp.com. It's ZoomCorp.com. We're talking about ZoomCorp.com. gmail.com. All right, let's get back to the show. What one or two last questions before we wrap up. The one and only Glee asked, is there a song that you would consider covering, or have you done any covers that we can look forward to in the near future?
Well, yeah, I mean, first of all, there's a billion great songs that I'd love to cover eventually throughout my career. But I mean, recently I just did a couple beautiful collaborations in quarantine, which has been kind of refreshing, just since we're not on the road, and getting to kind of work with artists and make something that probably wouldn't have happened if we weren't in the situation. I mean, I just did a collaboration. We just did Matt Cameron and I just did Halfway There by Soundgarden. Remotely, which I think turned out pretty amazing. Was as a tribute to Chris, and then also, you know, can you tell I love Chris Cornell?
A little bit.
I also just did a cover with the amazing Elaine Johannes. I did The Keeper by Chris Cornell, which was a song he wrote for the movie Machine Gun Preacher. Which I just put that on my Instagram and stuff if you want to check it out, which is actually kind of an interesting story, that Elaine had been stuck in Chile since quarantine started, because he was on tour playing Lollapalooza and about to go on the road and got stuck in Chile. So he's been stuck in Chile since this started.
Oh, wow.
In an Airbnb by himself, which is just crazy.
That's got to be crazy. Yeah.
And we did this for a charity show on I believe it aired Saturday, and for Music Cares and everything, which, you know, is obviously amazing to support all that. And it was just, and it happened to be the day it aired, the day that he could fly home. So he's finally almost home. So
finally
that
back.
was kind of a nice full circle thing. So you can check that out too. The Keeper by Elaine and myself is out now, and I'm sure there'll be more to come.
Awesome. Now, those are typically what you're talking about have been released as singles. And I know, like, as a fan of classic rock, you probably listen to a lot of albums. Like, because back in the day, a band would put out an album, and the album itself was a work of art. Like, the order of the songs mattered, and which songs came after which one, and which ones led into others, and that kind of stuff. How do you find that the music business today reacts to you writing your music? Because I imagine that the stuff you're doing on your albums is sort of done more similar to that, based on your influences.
It certainly is. I mean, our albums are very much meant to be listened to from front to back. They especially this one, it certainly takes you on a journey. Like Death by Rock and Roll, the single, that's the first song on the album. You know, and I thought that was kind of important to start people off with the introduction, and it really is just the introduction. It's just the tip of the iceberg of where this record goes. So I mean, definitely, I mean, to me, like I'm currently working on the album packaging and stuff, and just the track listing, the order, the photographs, the way it's conceived and presented, I think is so important, because that's how you really get to know the artist. It's not, no offense to podcasts and interviews and things, but it's not actually, you're not going to get to know the artist from that. Like you're going to get to understand that person and that artist through the music, because that's what you really pour your soul into. And so I think that, yeah, absolutely, it's certainly important, and it's something that I lost track there. Wait, your question was how it's affected.
I was just asking about the, like the change between the music industry now being so focused on like singles and hits and all that versus albums the way it used to be.
I don't know that the music industry's never not been focused on singles. I mean, I think that music is kind of cyclical. Like look at the 50s, it was all singles, and then the 60s and 70s came in, the album took over again, and the 80s is all singles, and there's great records there too. But then the 90s came over and it's albums again. So I think it's cyclical. It moves with the tides or whatever, if you will. So it's not strange to me. I understand. They have to market it. They have to advertise it to, in this crazy new world we live in, and you got to pick one song. You can't market 12 songs to everyone at once. It's too confusing. No one understands it. And so I think that's why, the fan base and everything is so important, of feeding them with the correct information, of trying to deliver your art to them in the most honest way possible. But there, the single decision is always a always a quandary
Oh,
with
yeah.
a lot of people, with a lot of opinions, and a lot of people have a different vote. And I think the buck always ends up stopping with me, but it's hard for me to choose a single because at the end, after I make an album, I love all of them.
Yeah.
So I don't know. So I kind of
Sophie's choice of your songs there.
I kind of turn to the powers that be of what they think should come out first and all that stuff. But because I just make music, man. I really don't think past that. Like, I know it sounds stupid, but I really do. That's all I focus on is the art of it.
Well, that's probably why it's so damn good.
Thank you.
Well, it's true. It's true. It's awesome getting to chat with you. If ever you're down to perform live and do like a fun late night set, and do like a show. Sometimes we do our show live at the Hollywood Improv on Melrose, and we've had
awesome! I love that place.
Yeah. We've had All American Rejects and
Gin Blossoms,
the Gin Blossoms,
Lisa Loeb.
and Lisa Loeb, and who was the
Johnny Manuel.
Johnny Manuel, and also all sorts of like fun people have swing by and stuff. So if ever you're around and quarantine is up and people are allowed to be at clubs again and do things, if you're ever in LA and you want to do a set,
and if you ever want to come see us do stand up, you're always on the comp list.
Absolutely,
100% of the time. Bring your whole band.
I would love to do both those things.
Great.
Hopefully this pandemic ends sooner than later, and we can actually get back to doing fun things like that, because I certainly miss it.
Absolutely.
You bet. Hey, we said that at the same time.
Jinx.
Jinx, you owe me a Coke.
You are the coolest. Thank you again so much for doing this. Where can people find you on social medias if they're looking for you? Twitter is, there's band accounts and my personal account. So my personal accounts is Twitter is just at Taylor Momsen, Instagram is at Taylor Momsen, Facebook I believe is at Taylor Momsen, and then the Pretty Reckless is the band sites for everything. So same thing, the Pretty Reckless on Instagram, the Pretty Reckless, TPR Official on Twitter, and the Pretty Reckless on Facebook. So. And I try to keep them all updated as much as possible. And
when is the new album coming out?
Information from. That is a great question that I still do not have an answer to.
So fall, winter?
I think we're looking at the very beginning of 2021.
Okay.
But we're going to be putting out more singles and stuff before then. Right now we're currently trying to figure out how to make visuals to the songs and make music videos and things, which is a bit of a struggle in quarantine, and just trying to figure out the logistics of all that. So that's the next hurdle to overcome at the moment. And so we're just kind of riding the storm out like everyone else. But really the main reason for pushing the album back was just simply putting out a few songs and stuff is one thing without being able to play, but putting out a full album and not being able to tour just feels a little wrong.
Yeah,
of course. It feels very bizarre. Like I've been saying, it's very strange. I mean, Death by Rock and Roll is the #1 rock song in the country, and we have never played it in front of a live audience before. Like,
wow.
How crazy is that? So it's just it's getting a little daunting. So we're itching for it to come back.
Oh, me too. I get it. Matt, where can people find you on the internet?
There are links to everything at funnymatt.com, or if you're upset by me in any way, please let me know at mattwalkersucks.com.
And people do.
Yes, that's a real thing.
Yeah, people really do that, and they do hate him a lot because he says horrible things all the time about J.J. Abrams.
Yes,
you can always get me at Stephen Glickman, Stephen Glickman at Stephen Glickman, Stephen Glickman on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, LinkedIn. I'm just kidding. No one uses that anymore. Taylor Momsen, you're the fucking coolest. Thank you for doing this.
No, honestly, guys, thank you so much for having me. This has been a blast, and hopefully we can actually do this in person at some point.
I hope so. That'd be awesome. All right, talk to you soon. Take it easy.
Thanks.
All right, stay safe, guys.
All right, you too. Bye-bye.
All right, later.
Oh.